If you watch my YouTube channel regularly, or maybe listen to my podcast, you'll know that I am actually quite a big fan of failed systems, if you like. Kind of the underdogs of the retro gaming world, which technically were great products, but for whatever reason, they just didn't succeed in the way they deserved or their makers intended. Now, over the years on this channel, I've covered systems like the CDI, the 3DO, and one of my favourites, the Atari Jaguar. Now yes, I am actually quite a big fan of the Jaguar, even though it's often ridiculed in the retro gaming scene. There is just something about the system that's always drawn me in. Maybe it's something to do with its relative obscurity today, the failed dreams of actually pretty decent hardware, or the joy of just owning something that not many gamers today give much attention. And I do actually enjoy the Jag as a system, and to be honest, it's really the only console that I actually collect for. In terms of hardware, I've got the rather rare in 2019 fully working Atari Jaguar CD add-on. I've actually done a video on this before. But the one thing that's always been missing from my collection is a Pro controller. Now, the standard Atari Jaguar controller is something that's often as ridiculed as the system itself, and it always ends up on those worst controllers ever made top 10 lists that games websites seem to love doing. It's a 17-button design with this rather weird-looking telephone pad section on the bottom. Now, this really harks back to the early 80s on systems like the Intellivision, and it's designed to accept control inlays. Now, in theory, these are kind of a good idea because it gives you a lot more buttons, but in practice, not so much, as in use you've got to take your eyes away from the screen to see what they do, as it's pretty hard to memorize or to guide your finger to the correct button without looking. But actually in use, the controller is more comfortable than it looks, leading me to think a lot of these games journalists who stick this on their worst controller lists have probably never used one, as to be fair, there have been a lot worse released over the years. But this isn't the only controller on the Jag. There was a more limited edition Pro controller. Now, this was released by Atari in 1995, right at the end of the Jaguar's commercial life. And as you'd imagine, coming out so late, these are actually quite rare and fetch big prices if you can find them on eBay today. But luckily, there is now a new solution for Jaguar fans who've always wanted to get their hands on a Pro controller. A guy called Starwander on the Atari Age forum announced in late 2017 that he wanted to make a recreation of the Pro controller and assess the interest on the board. And that thread is actually over 39 pages long now. So as you'd imagine, there was sufficient interest, and 12 months later, by November 2018, they started shipping. Now, I've ordered 2 of them. He sells them for $60 each, which isn't bad, so that means you can get a box of 2 for $120. And here they are. Now, they arrived in this pretty unexciting looking cardboard box, but inside we've got 2 almost exact recreations of the legendary Atari Jaguar Pro controller. And these do feel pretty nice. Now, you have to bear in mind the work that went into making these. We obviously had a year's worth of testing. He had to remake the exterior shell mold exactly, minus the Atari logo that unfortunately he couldn't include due to copyright reasons. We had the D-pad mold, the buttons mold, the membrane mold and the board, the connector port mold. It actually cost over $30,000 for him to complete this project. And incidentally, these actually do work with more than just the Atari Jaguar. They're also compatible with the Atari STE via the enhanced joystick ports and the Atari Falcon. And he also offers a series of adapters that means you can use these Pro controllers with the Atari 8-bit machines as well. So just how are the Pro controllers different to the original? Well, at a glance, you can tell instantly they have more buttons, as if the Jaguar was lacking on buttons. But these are some pretty nice additions. Now, we do get 3 extra fire buttons included here, and they are a smaller size than the original and definitely more comfortable on the fingers. And also, these are very useful, some shoulder buttons as well. Now obviously, this controller is 25 years newer than my originals, but feeling it, it does have that brand new feel, as you'd expect. But I can instantly tell there is already a big difference in the buttons. Now not only that smaller size that are more comfortable that I mentioned before, but these are nice and clicky. The original controllers had a somewhat muted, mushy feel to them. And the shoulder buttons are very well placed, very easy to reach with your fingers, and also have a very satisfying click to them as well. And if we look here, there is also a slight notch taken out of the bottom of the number pad area. A very subtle difference, but it does mean it is a lot easier to remove the overlays than it is on the original controller. A very well thought out and very welcome addition. And the D-pad is a bit different on the Pro controller too. If you look here, it's actually a bit recessed, which on the original, it was raised out of the controller a bit more. And on the Pro controller, it feels like it's got a bit less travel, which actually I don't think feels quite as good as the original. It's not a massive difference, but it will definitely take some getting used to. So the big question is, are these worth a buy? How many of the Jaguar's limited library of just 44 commercial titles released on cartridge when it was on sale, and 13 for the Atari Jaguar CD add-on, are actually upgraded to work with the Pro controller? Well, it looks like there are officially only about 10 games. But for those that don't, the extra buttons on the Pro controller get mapped to the bottom keys on the keypad, so it does mean that you can use them in all games that use a keypad as well, and for some, it does make various controls a bit easier to access. The limited games that do natively support the Pro controller are definitely nicer to play with it. For example, doing hard right and left turns in Atari carts is a nice addition. Defender 2000 lets you choose the Pro controller and the higher button count from the menu. And playing Iron Soldier makes it a lot easier to swap weapons using the Pro controller. But apart from that, it is what it is, a slightly better Atari Jaguar controller. And you can't fault this product at all. It's an incredibly accurate recreation of the original Pro controller, and any faults that it does have are also faults in the original, as it is pretty much an exact copy. So is it worth buying? Well, that's really down to whether or not you want, or have always wanted, a Pro controller for your Jaguar collection. If so, then this is a must-buy. Thank you for watching this video, and if you do enjoy my videos here on YouTube, just a quick heads up, I think you will love my weekly retro gaming podcast. Now, new episodes are released every Friday from theretrohour.com. A couple of recent episodes you might find interesting. We did a full inside story on the legendary Mastertronic label with the forum employee Anthony Guter, and also we were joined by Sean Southern, getting the inside story on games like Supercars, Lotus Turbo Challenge, Kickstart, and lots more, and you can check out the show every week from theretrohour.com. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next vid.